Hello and welcome everyone to another quarterfinal edition of Game Central presented by Bear Complex. Get better. Annie Sakamoto joining me at the desk. Annie, we've already seen some action in Test 1 today. What are your thoughts on the comp so far?
Well, I loved Test 1, Tommy. It was, these were all movements that were very doable, but really what it came down to was not just being fast, but perfect. A lot of transitions, a lot of areas where you could make some mistakes that actually could be costly. And so I really liked this test because it really came down to who was kind of most perfect on that performance.
Just to take a quick look at what that test was, in case you missed it, 2 3-round triplets with a minute rest in between, little dumbbells, little gymnastics, a few double unders sprinkled in. And to give you a quick refresher on the top scores from each continent on the women's side, a couple of familiar names up there with Kristen Holta and Carrie Pierce leading the way for their continents. And of course, Clair Toomey is at the top of Oceania, but a woman I know you have your eye on that's just behind her on the leaderboard is Cara Saunders.
Yeah, so Cara Saunders was actually just 10 seconds behind Clair Toomey-Orr on that event, on that first test. She just missed qualifying last year. The year before that, she was out because she was having a baby. But this is a lady that we've seen go head-to-head with Tia before, and so I'm really excited because I think this is a year where these two ladies very well may go head-to-head again.
Will be exciting to see them go head-to-head in test number 2. Let's take a look at what is in store for all of the athletes in test 2. For time, 60 GHD sit-ups, 6 rope climbs to a 15-foot target, 60 alternating single leg squats, then the reps go 55, 50, all the way down into 33 and 30. The time cap is 20 minutes. And Annie, correct me if I'm wrong, but this one just feels like a brute.
Oh, this looks like such a nasty test, but I love it. It is this combination that's going to really smoke your quads, your hip flexors, your midline, and it's early on in the competition weekend. So not only to see this test, but how this test affects other tests within the competition is very intriguing to me.
Well, I know how I'm feeling after that workout, but I doubt that these 4 women that we're about to watch throw down feel anywhere near as sore as I do, because I'm certainly not as fit as them. Taking a look at the 4 women that will take part in our featured matchup. Obviously, the fittest woman on earth, Tia Toomey-Orr, no surprise to see her there. But then she's got a trio of up-and-coming athletes that will be throwing down alongside of her. Haley Adams obviously has made a name for herself as a teenager, but another up-and-comer, Mallory O'Brien, will be close on her tails. She's still in the teenage division, but obviously, all eyes are going to be on Clair Toomey-Orr, the 4-time fittest woman on earth. Anytime she's in a matchup, your eyes got to go right to her.
Right, and like you said, Tommy, no surprise to see her name in this matchup. But I love that we have these 2 young guns in both Haley Adams, who has proven herself as a formidable competitor at this point, and Mallory O'Brien, who made a great name for herself in the Open this year. And then I love that we have Feeroozeh Saghafi, so a name that some of us may recognize, but a lot of us may not. And it's always fun, I think, in some of these matchups to see a name, see a face that we're not quite familiar with yet.
Yeah, and taking a quick look at the body of work that Clair Toomey has managed to build in her career so far, and it's certainly a resume that stands up to anyone across the sport. So far, she's been to the game 6 times, and every single one she's ended up in the top 10. More impressively, though, she's also got 5 top 50 open performances coming off a win worldwide. What stands out most to you when you think about just what Tia has been able to accomplish in her career so far?
I think it's the poise and grace with which she's done it, right? And the Open this year is a perfect example. She's not training for the Open. The Open is just a means for her to qualify for the next stage of competition, but oops, she wins it. And she is just such a steady athlete and an athlete that really knows herself. So I love to watch Tia compete because she knows the rest of the field is there, but she's really concerned with just her own performance, and I think that serves her well.
One of the athletes alongside Tia is an American athlete by the name of Feeroozeh Saghafi. Fee actually has a Games appearance under her belt, first qualifying in 2019. She's on the kind of up-and-up trajectory as far as trying to make her known and crack into the elite divisions of the women's side of the house. And looking at Fee, what really stands out for you, Annie?
Well, I think it makes sense that she's here as far as she's a smaller athlete, so pistols are kind of in her favor. She also got 5th in 2019 in first cut, which involved legless rope climbs. So really the only question in this test comes down to the glute ham sit-ups. Obviously, being in this matchup, it means that she did really well in the glute ham sit-ups.
And there's certainly a lot of those here in this second test. One athlete we should be no surprise that she's going to show up here, given her body of work so far at a young age, is Haley Adams. She may just barely be breaking the 20-year-old mark, but she already has 2 games appearances as an individual under her belt, as well as 2 top 10 games performances to boot. And looking at Haley in this test in particular, we'll get to see her alongside the woman that she's been chasing the last 2 years. What are you really focused on for Haley in this workout in particular?
Well, I think she was probably really excited to see this test come out because as a Mayhem athlete, we know one of the things that Rich and all the Mayhem athletes focus on heavily is glute ham sit-ups. So when you look at that volume, 180 glute ham sit-ups, to her, she's probably like, oh, this is half of what I normally do. And again, just to see her back up the last 2 years, I'm really excited for Haley and what she might have in store for the next couple of years.
And rounding out this group of 4 women is a young athlete who's following in Haley Adams' footsteps, Mal O'Brien. We have talked a lot about her so far because of her impressive performances in the Open, but she has some games appearances as a teenager. She is still in the teenage division and looking for her first potential appearance as an individual. Annie, I don't know what else to say about O'Brien. She just keeps impressing me. What are you looking for her in terms of performance in this workout alongside some big names?
I mean, I would have to say she's proven herself already to me. Like you said, she's competed in the 14 to 15-year-old division 2 years, 2018 and 2019, pulling a 4th place and a 5th place. She finishes 5th worldwide in the Open this year. She finishes 4th in 21.1, 2nd in 21.3, and those are worldwide finishes. So to me, I'm already just super impressed with not only her performances, but her ability to kind of stay calm under the pressure of it all. So in my opinion, she's already done a lot, but I can't wait to see what else she has in store.
It's going to be an exciting matchup to see these 4 women tackle this test in just a moment, but want to share with you all a special offer from our sponsor, from Bear Complex. If you visit bearcomplex.com and use the promo code CrossFit20, you'll get 20% off your order today. Test 2 about to get underway. Tia Toomey-Orr in your upper left-hand corner. Haley Adams to the right of her. Down in the bottom right corner, Feeroozeh Saghafi out of North America. And Mallory O'Brien, Mal O'Brien down in the bottom left-hand corner. Now remember, we do have the round indicators above the video window of each athlete. Be sure to keep an eye on those as we check in throughout the workout. Man, Annie, if you talk about just upping the volume factor here, starting a workout with 60 GHD sit-ups. I mean, I'm just a normal athlete, right? You know, that looks intimidating to me.
Right, and I am just so amazed at how fast these ladies are already going, because for me, you know, I haven't tested this workout where you have, and thinking about it, I would be at a much more slow, controlled pace. I mean, these girls are firing right out of the cannon on this first set.
You know, I did this test not quite as fast, as of course I didn't finish, but I went in sets of 10. For me, GHD sit-ups, if I'm not doing the volume as much, it's something I need to be very careful with as a medium to lower condition athlete. For these elite athletes, you can see them kind of snapping and firing up. Is there any consideration given to the reps and sets and chunks going along here, or are they just going to blast this?
For these athletes, I don't think there is. I really think that they've trained enough, they know their capacity enough, especially against somebody like Haley Adams, who we know does a lot of GHD sit-ups, being a mayhem athlete. But I think that, you know, most athletes out here that are participating in this test do need to be thoughtful about their sets. And, you know, while a lot of them could rip off 60 in a row, is that their best choice? And I'm not even talking just about soreness, but just about now what is 50 going to look like and what is 40 going to look like?
And Haley Adams is the first athlete off of the round of 60 GHD sit-ups. She immediately jumps up and starts working through her first set of 6 rope climbs up to a 15-foot target. Mallory O'Brien, Tia Toomey-Orr, both off. Mallory taking a little bit more of a, I guess, a casual walk over to the rope. Feeroozeh Saghafi also up there as well. All four women were working through 6 rope climbs. One of the things that we talked about a little bit before, but is the interference factor that the GHD sit-ups. How does that factor in here for rope climbs?
Well, you would probably know better than I would at this point, having done this test. But, you know, if you look at the way these ladies climb the rope, so much of an effective rope climb involves bringing your knees up as high as you can into your chest so that you can use your legs and hip flexors more than your arms. Those usually are stronger than our arms, right? So to think of how taxed not only your midline, but your hip flexors and your quads are, I'm sure that for most of us, that would have a severe effect on our ability to effectively climb a rope.
I love rope climbs, and I'm not going to lie, there were a few rope climbs where I had no idea where my knees and lower half of my body were when I was trying to reach up to pinch my feet. I just had to kind of close my eyes and hope for the best, and thankfully I didn't fall off the rope.
And Tia Toomey is off the rope first. Very impressive. Now, Tia, of course, is the only female in this group that is not in the North American competition. So her score won't affect the other 3 ladies. All the other 3 ladies are competing for North America.
It's important to note that out of these quarterfinals, all of these athletes will be grouped according to their continent. So as much as we like to compare on a worldwide stage, obviously that will factor in later on when you're competing against everyone at the games. But for now, it's just against the fellow athletes in your continent. We have 3 women from the North American continent, along with Tia Toomey-Orr, who is, of course, out of Oceania. And pistols are one of those things that if they're done right, they are just absolutely beautiful in the rhythm and the pacing and the balance that you see on display here from these athletes.
That's so funny, Tommy. I was watching Fee specifically and thinking that exact thing, is that when somebody is good at pistols, you look at it and you think, that doesn't look that hard. I think I could do that. That looks pretty easy. And
then you watch me with, you know, a heel riser in my shoe, 2 knee sleeves. I'm hunched over. I'm holding my opposite foot, and you think, that's. I don't know what that. Yeah, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, nice save from Haley Adams just a second ago on that pistol. It looks like she might even have Rich right in front of her to pace off of.
That's certainly a good person to be able to pace off. Rich, obviously proficient with the pistols as well. And just as a reminder for everyone watching at home, we do have a set floor layout here, so athletes do have to move through different sections of the floor to be able to perform that work. And Mallory O'Brien is the first athlete through her 60 pistols and on to the second round of this workout. She's starting on her 50 GHD sit-ups, and not far behind, she's joined by the remaining 3 women in the field. This is definitely one of those workouts where so much of the work is done in the front half of the test, because you go 60 GHD sit-ups, 50 GHD sit-ups to start, and before you're even into the back half of this test, you're 110 GHDs in, and your guts are starting to blow up a little bit.
Well, again, you would know better than I would, but yeah, and that is the lion's share of the work, like you said, especially on those GHDs. So my guess would be most athletes would start to kind of get bogged down on this set of 50. But Mal O'Brien, I mean, all these ladies, they're just still at such an incredibly fast pace on these GHD sit-ups.
And Haley Adams is absolutely flying through her set of GHD sit-ups. She actually lost her hair tie, came flying off. That just tells you how fast she's moving and how quickly she's moving through these things. I'm curious, because this is obviously something that I haven't quite figured out, but as you start to tire out a little bit on this movement, are there other different tips or techniques that you can maybe employ, whether it's with the legs or the hip flexors, to kind of maybe reproportion where the fatigue is here?
Definitely, and you know, GHD sit-ups for me are a movement where I can really feel them in my quads. Now, if I'm mixing it with something that involves a lot of quads, be it squatting, single leg squatting, or something else, you can, depending on how strong you are in your lower back and your midline, really just kind of stop using your quads and hip flexors quite as much and start to use a little bit more back and midline to pull yourself up. Now, if you don't have the midline to support that, you will be devastatingly crippled, specifically in the lower back for most people the next day.
That is why I do not do that.
And just go for the quad burn.
We're closing in on the 7-minute mark here, and Haley Adams, once again, was the first athlete off of the GHD sit-ups. She was followed closely behind by Feeroozeh Saghafi in second, Mallory O'Brien in third, and Tia Toomey maybe playing a little coy here as the last athlete off the 50 GHD sit-ups. I'm kind of looking at the rest of this workout. Is there anything to be gained in terms of picking up the pace and passing people? Is there enough to chew on here?
I think there is, and I think, again, this is where Toomey shines as the athlete that she is, right? So although she can't see these other ladies, I think even if she could, even if she knew that she wasn't out in front, she wouldn't panic. She knows herself so well as an athlete. Look at that. She's done with those rope climbs. She knows herself so well as an athlete that she knows when it's time to pick up the pace. She knows exactly how much she has left in the tank.
Interestingly enough, it was about a 3-way tie between Toomey-Orr, O'Brien, and Saghafi getting back to those pistols. Haley Adams, who was the first to the rope, was the last off of the rope. Maybe we're seeing some of that fatigue start to catch up now as we close in on the 8-minute mark here. Remember, the time cap for this test is 20 minutes, and I will tell you that I hit every part of that time cap. Thankfully, it actually saved me from the rest of this bulk of GHD sit-ups. But right now, all 4 athletes are working through their round of 50 pistols before they start into their 40 GHD sit-ups. And I think this is kind of the turning point here, where you start to get a little bit downhill, you see the rep numbers reduced, and you can see some of the top athletes pick up speed.
Right, and so I'm curious, Tommy, where and when did you start to feel this test? Was it quads? Was it breath? Was it, in the 40s, in the 50s?
So right after the 10-second countdown happened, it switched over to start counting up for the timer. Right about then is when I felt it. I don't train, GHD sit-ups are tough for me. It's not something I've trained a ton of. And then pistols at being 6'3" is something that I purposefully avoid in my training just because some past athletic experience have made my ankles, just a junkyard. But I definitely started to feel it in the first set of pistols, the first set of single leg squats. My quads started to blow up, midline started to blow up a little bit. My back particularly started to blow up because I think I was maybe hyperextending a little bit on the GHDs.
Right. Mallory O'Brien and Feeroozeh Saghafi were the first off of those pistols and back on the GHD. It's interesting too, you have to wonder, there was a very specified distance that the top of the pad of the GHD had to be from the ground. And for the females, that's 37 inches. So it makes you wonder if these ladies, you can see they all have pads underneath the GHD. Is this a distance that they're used to going to, or do they usually actually go a little bit deeper to the ground, in which case having the pad there might make these sit-ups a little bit easier, shorten the range of motion for them, for what they're used to.
And right now we're getting, north of 130 GHD sit-ups at this point in the workout as we cross 10 minutes and the halfway mark time-wise for this test. And one thing I guess I'm really curious about is over the course of, 100 GHD sit-ups, we hear a lot of athletes start to get dizzy. Is this something that you ever experienced in terms of you're basically hinging in half and going all the way inverted essentially for a split second, and you see some athletes start to struggle with that as you get past the 100 rep mark?
I am not somebody that has ever experienced either the dizziness, or we've had people too get a headache, a really bad headache, kind of the whipping of the neck and the head. Knock on wood, that's not something I've experienced, but I have seen very often either headaches, dizziness, and that's hard when you then have to, throw yourself 15 feet up in the air. It can be a little unnerving, I would imagine.
And remember, these athletes have already been upside down in test 1. Handstand push-ups can be a little discombobulating as well, and now you have 180 GHD sit-ups as all 4 women are finishing up their round of 4 rope climbs, I believe it is, and Tia Toomey-Orr has moved to the forefront now. She's the first to get to the set of 40 alternating single leg squats. Feeroozeh Saghafi right behind her in second, followed by Mallory O'Brien and Haley Adams, who has been the first athlete off the GHD pretty much each round. But we've seen her slow considerably on the rope climbs and the pistols.
And Mallory O'Brien as well. You can see that knee up to climb the rope is really starting to get a lot harder for Mallory O'Brien and Haley Adams. And again, that, slowing down that rope climb is going to cost these ladies.
About 8 minutes, just over 8 minutes left in this test till the time cap. Doesn't look like any of these women will have any trouble getting underneath that. But as we start to get towards the back end of this test, what is really the focus now, considering that you've basically done 150 of each movement?
Right. I mean, I think it is just staying consistent. If you've noticed, none of these ladies have broken up any of these movements. The GHDs, there's Tia. Back to the GHD first. The GHDs have just been consistent the entire time. Nobody's braked on those. And then the pistols have been rhythmic. And again, nobody has had to stop or fumble on the pistols. And
despite all the jostling for positions, all 4 athletes to the final round of 30 GHD sit-ups within a few seconds of each other. One of the things I'm curious we might see here from Tia, she really has showcased over the course of her career that killer instinct when she can kind of smell she's in the range of an event when you can see her really attack and ramp it up a notch. Even though she can't see her fellow competitors here. Is that just one of those things that's innate to an athlete that you see?
I think it is, but I think, Tia, I don't want to shortchange her. I think it's something that she's trained. I think that the mental aspect of competing is something that Tia worked really hard on. And as gifted as she is athletically, I think she needs to be given credit for the between the ears side of her competition.
Mm-hmm. And Tia Toomey-Orr is done with her final set of GHD sit-ups and making quick work to jump up on the rope for her final 3 rope climbs. Feeroozeh Saghafi joining her on the rope as well. Mallory O'Brien has fallen off a little bit. She is behind Haley Adams right now. As Tia wraps up, I believe she's got 1 more rep to go before she moves on to her final set of alternating single leg squats. Can't say I've been to this position here because I didn't make it this far before the time cap, but it's certainly impressive watching Tia blow through this as she's now on to her final set of squats.
And really, if you watched her rope climbs, her tempo and her rhythm on those rope climbs never changed. Where somebody like Mallory O'Brien, I mean, again, a phenomenal performance, but you can really see how much more labored this last set of rope climbs looks than her first set.
And Feeroozeh Saghafi, the other athlete that is making work through the pistols alongside Toomey-Orr. Mallory O'Brien is done, along with Haley Adams. They are all 4 throwing down in this final set of alternating single leg squats. It's going to be a race to the finish here as we close in on the final reps of 30. Keep your eyes on Toomey-Orr in the upper left-hand corner and Feeroozeh Saghafi as they try to close out this test on top. Toomey-Orr is done with a time of 14:32.
Feeroozeh Saghafi should be finishing up, I believe, right behind her. Couple more.
And Saghafi is done in with a time of 14:46. O'Brien made up some pace behind her at 14:49. All that's left is Adams out on the floor. An impressive performance by O'Brien to make up some time as well. And Adams is done, but Tia Toomey is your winner with a time of 14:32. The champ sets the record for test number 2. That's back-to-back records in both tests on day number 1. Taking a look at the top scores across the 6 continents globally. Obviously, Tia sets the top 1 for Oceania. Fee also, we got to see her throw down. She takes down the top score for North America, but then some other familiar names. Laura Horvath showing up there with the top score over in Europe, and Melina Rodriguez, she's a games athlete, 17:43 puts her on top of South America. And Clair Toomey-Orr actually got a penalty in this test But I think that just speaks to how impressive she is, that she got a penalty, still ends up with the top time. But reflecting on the rest of this matchup, what are your big takeaways?
Well, again, Tia's consistency in that test was just very impressive. Mallory O'Brien is the real deal. I'm going to give it to her. And again, not surprising to see Haley Adams do really good in this test with the volume of glute ham sit-ups. And great to see Feeroozeh Saghafi, a name that, again, not all of us are familiar with, but I think we should become a little more acquainted with.
Yeah, those women will have a tall order chasing down the champ. And we had the chance to catch up with the champ after her Test 2 performance as she reflected on the top time that she was able to lay down on day number 1.
But after day 1, can't complain. I don't know where it's ranked up against the whole world or anything like that, but as far as, you know, my personal performance and stuff, I'm happy with it, and, you know, we're on to the next.
No surprise that the champ is treating day 1 just like a walk in the park. We've got your overall leaders after 2 events, starting out in Asia and Africa. Yuko Sakayama, former national champ, is your overall leader in Asia. And a pair of Michelles, Michelle Marin and Michelle Basnet, lead the way for Africa. Moving over to Europe and North America, Scandinavia rules the day out in Europe. Holta, Dahlstrom, Matilda Garns, 3 Norwegian women inside the top 5. And then for North America, the reigning fittest woman in the United States, Carrie Pierce, is followed closely behind by 2 teenage athletes in Haley Adams and Mal O'Brien. Last but certainly not least, Oceania and South America. 4 games athletes out of Australia in the top 5. Tia, Cara, Harriet Roberts, Maddie Sturt, with Tia and Cara in their usual position atop the leaderboard. And then in South America, it was a good day for the Argentinians. Sasha Nieves and Melina Rodriguez, both out of Argentina, are 1 and 2. Closing thoughts after day 1 and the 2 very stout tests that we got to see the women take part here.
I gotta say, you know, if you're one of the other female athletes, you gotta be a little nervous as far as Clair Toomey-Orr goes. She didn't mean to win the Open, she won the Open. First 2 tests, not only does she have the top times in Oceania, but she has the top times, period. So if you are anybody else other than Tia Toomey-Orr, you're kind of wondering, where do you fall underneath her at this point?
Crazy to think that she's still just getting better. It's going to be exciting to see how she performs the rest of the way. That's going to do it for us here at Game Central, presented by Bear Complex. Get better. For Annie Sakamoto, I'm Tommy Marquez. We'll see you guys next time with some coverage for the rest of this quarterfinal round.